Setup costs in the UAE is something a lot of people kept warning me about, but I never truly had the full picture, and it was surprisingly difficult to get a complete understanding of it. Thankfully for you though, 3 months into my UAE journey, I'm going to give you the complete breakdown. When you're thinking about moving to the UAE and you're doing your number crunching, it's natural to do the numbers based on your usual expected monthly costs. But moving to any country abroad comes with an initial bulk of costs that you simply can't ignore and that you definitely need to budget for. Some of these costs are going to happen regardless of where you move, and some of these costs are specific to the UAE. In this video, I'm going to run you through the expenses that I've incurred line by line, and that will help you to set aside money for this initial period when you move to the UAE. I'll be talking about a lot of this in UAE dirhams. So for reference, at the time of filming, which is April 2023, the conversion rate is £1 to 4.5 dirhams. I'll talk about these costs in roughly chronological order, so there's some reason to the order as well. Right, let's get stuck in. Firstly, there's your flights over. Flight costs are running higher recently thanks to jet fuel price fluctuations as well as other factors, and it's easy to overlook something as simple as actually flying over to the UAE. For a typical family of 2 adults and 2 kids, you could be looking at over £2,500 or $3,000 depending on where you're flying from. Personally, I paid £2,500 for my family of 5 people, which is 2 adults and 3 children. As a side note, you'll also need to budget monthly for your flights back home. When you move, you won't simply have a house ready to move into, and you can't rent a place until you've got your residence sorted. You'll need to stay at a hotel whilst you sort out your accommodation and your visa and so on. Now, there might be an exception if your work are arranging something for you, but generally I would budget for at least 2 months in serviced accommodation. Most hotels usually have serviced apartments that they let out on longer term stays. So to give you an idea, I paid around 12,000 dirhams a month for 2 months, and that included all the bills, internet, cleaning, etc. So that comes to about £5,000 or $6,000 for the 2 months. Next, we have the visa costs. Now, if you're moving here for employment, then the hiring company that you're moving with will most likely be covering this. But if you're covering the visa costs yourself, this can run into the thousands. The filing fees alone come to 5,155 dirhams. And so if you have a family, that quickly racks up. For the purposes of our calculation, I'm going to say a family of 4, which adds up to around £4,500 or $5,500. Many people use an agent to actually help them through this stage as well if they don't want to deal directly with the visa running, and that will cost you a little extra as well. Now, here's one that caught me off guard personally. It's called DEWA. DEWA is the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, and there's also an Abu Dhabi equivalent as well. This is basically the Central Electricity and Water Authority. And unlike most places in the world, you actually have to lodge a deposit with them for your utilities. You'll pay 2,000 dirham for an apartment or 4,000 dirham for a villa. And the downside here really is that you don't actually get this money back until you move out of the country. Sure, you'll get it back when you move out of your house or your apartment, but then you'll be giving it straight back if you're moving to another villa or apartment in the UAE. The figure is lower in Abu Dhabi, where it's usually 1,000 dirham deposit. Another key cost that can get overlooked is agents. So when you rent a place in the UAE, you'll usually end up paying 5% of your annual rental amount to an agent. So let's say your annual rental amount is 150,000 dirhams, for example. You would then have a bill to pay immediately of 7,500 dirhams that you need to pay the agent. You can usually negotiate this though, and I do recommend that you do try and reduce this 5% figure as low as possible. You can also source properties direct from the owner to avoid this 5% fee. But having gone through the whole process myself, I found it easier in the end to work with a few trusted agents who listen to your requirements and understand your requirements and show you properties that are coming up on the market. And since the property market is very hot here right now, including the rental market, properties do get snapped up very quickly. So having an agent on your side can be quite helpful. Another cost is health insurance. Now for expats, you need to cover the cost of your and your family's healthcare. If you're coming to work for a company in the UAE, then it might very well be included in your package. But if not, then I would keep a budget of around 5,000 to 10,000 dirhams for your healthcare. This will vary on the package that you go for, but personally, I'm looking at around 8,000 dirhams. The next thing to include is your car rental. The UAE is a very hot country, especially in the summer, and you definitely don't want to be going around walking everywhere. You will need a car to get around. Now, there's just one problem with that. You can't actually buy a car until you've got your Emirates ID sorted. So just like the accommodation that we talked about, you'll be renting a car until you're actually allowed to buy one. costs of a rental car can obviously vary, but I would budget around 2,000 dirhams a month for your car rental. Once you buy a car, the market is plentiful. Used car prices right now globally are pretty high because of the shortage of new cars that are coming on the market. But generally, I found the prices of the secondhand car market to be roughly in line or slightly cheaper than the UK. Now, rental accommodation comes unfurnished, meaning there's literally nothing inside except the bare walls. So you are going to have to get your wallet out to furnish that apartment, the sofas, the washing machines, and everything else that you need to live day to day. The good thing here though is that furniture is generally not quite as expensive as it is in the UK, but while it might cost you less, it is still going to be a chunky amount coming out. You're going to have the usual stuff, the cookers, the washing machine, the sofa, the dining table, the chairs, the kitchen appliances, and so on. Now the costs here will ultimately depend on the brands and the quality that you go for, but generally speaking, I would budget around £3,000 here. The other great thing here is that it's very easy buying furniture. You usually just go into a store, pick what you want, and the price on the label usually includes delivery and installation. So if you're anything like me, terrible at DIY, you won't have a finger to lift, which is awesome. There are some other ad hoc smaller costs that you'll find yourself getting your wallet out for. Things like getting your driving license, the school registration fees, the school uniforms, and so on and so forth. And these are all part and parcel of moving to any country. Now, those are all the main costs, but the big question is, what are we looking at in total? So let's do the maths. Adding all of this up in total, I reckon there's been about £15,000 to £20,000 of setup costs. Now that might sound like a lot, and it certainly blows the 5,000 to 10,000 rule of thumb that I mentioned in my last video out of the water. But actually, if you break down the costs, the UAE specific costs are not that many. These are all just costs that anybody would incur when moving abroad. So there you have it, folks. These are the main initial costs that you'll incur when setting up in the UAE. Naturally, there might well be some stuff that I've missed or underestimated or perhaps even overestimated. And if I did, then do let me know in the comments. And also, if you've recently moved out to the UAE, tell me, how much did it cost you? We'd love to hear other people's experiences as well. Stay tuned for more content like this. And if there's anything specific that you think I should be covering, then let me know in the comments. Until the next time, Assalamu alaikum.